Hi everybody, it's Honest John again. Now, I have to say I do feel quite a bit of sympathy towards Muslims who live here in the US or in Europe or actually any place outside of the Muslim world. The events in Australia, Canada, the United States, and most recently in France have once again focused the harsh light of suspicion on these communities. And I understand that this week there was a hand grenade tossed into a mosque. And I wonder if the person who did that, person or persons who did that, realize that they are just as much terrorists as the Muslims who murdered the people at Charlie Hebdo magazine. They were probably Christians, Christian terrorists. Obviously, only a small percentage of Muslims would commit acts of violence. But you can't tell the good guys from the bad guys just by looking at them. And it's a natural tendency among human beings to generalize. That is, if we see a member of a group or something do something wrong, we tend to ascribe those characteristics to all members of that group. We like to think that they're just all alike. So whites might think that all blacks or Latinos are gang members, that all Arabs are terrorists, that all Jews are money grubbers. Blacks will regard the majority of whites, especially cops, as out to get them, as being racially biased. Generalization results in negative stereotypes and racial profiling. But we don't generalize when it comes to our own group. If a white person sees another white person doing something wrong, they see it as an aberration rather than as a characteristic of the group that they belong to. And they will resent, and people will resent anyone who tries to stereotype the people in their group. So white people resent it when black people, for example, see racism as a general characteristic of whites, even though the percentage of racist whites is significantly higher than the percentage of blacks or Latinos who are gang members or Muslims who are terrorists. It wasn't long ago that white Christians were engaged in acts of terrorism right here in the United States, blowing up women's clinics and murdering staffers of those clinics, including doctors and nurses. And yet, since these people were part of the white Christian majority, nobody painted all Christians or all white folk people with that same brush. Even though their religious faith, their Christianity, was as much a motivation for their acts of violence as Islam motivates ISIS or motivated the terrorists in France. Cliven Bundy and many of the criminals who went to support him are part of the Christian identity movement. These people were just as motivated and willing to engage in violence as any Muslim terrorist. And in fact, the husband and wife who murdered the two police officers in Las Vegas were part of the group at the Bundy Ranch. And their Christian faith was just as much of a motivation for their violence as the Quran was for Islamic terrorists. Every holy book has in it plenty of justification for violence. And even though the majority of adherents to any faith will not be violent, there will always be some who will. The sad fact is that as long as religion exists, there will always be violence in the name of God. Thanks for listening.